Well, hey, everybody, getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest. Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody, welcome to episode number 171 of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Happy Halloween, everybody. It is Tuesday, October 31st, 2023. Hope you are snacking on that candy that you're going to be giving out to the ghosts and goblins this evening. And that you have some nice weather. We have beautiful weather here in the Be Our Guest Podcast Studios in lovely St. Peters, Missouri. Although it is cold this year here at Halloween. It is cold. Right now, as I'm looking at my iPhone down that is docked here in the studio, 36 degrees. And I mean, it is bright and sunny outside, but 36. When I got up this morning to get on the treadmill at about I got up at about 4:45 this morning. I looked over at the we have one of those clocks because I have a clock radio by my on my nightstand, and it's got a thermometer that's out on our deck, and our deck temperature was 24 degrees this morning. 24 degrees. It's too early for that stuff. Are you kidding me? It's October. That's like January cold. Anyway, hope you're having better weather, that your kids hopefully get to get out there and have some fun tonight, trick or treating. That was one of my favorite things to do as a kid. Our main topic today, we're going to talk about some of the fun times we had that I got to have at Spinning Wheels Roller Rink, which is the skating rink, the roller skating rink that I managed from the time I was basically, I started working there when I was 14 because my next door neighbors owned it and I grew up in the place. I mean, I was there from the time I was like 5 years old. But as soon as I was old enough to work there at 14, I worked there, and I worked there all the way through college. I ran the place. But I was basically in charge of like all the promotions and stuff, and I DJ'd and I managed it, and everything we did. And we had some crazy stuff we would do for promotional stuff, and Halloween was always a blast. So we'll talk about some of that stuff here in a few minutes. But I hope your kids are excited for Halloween. Just an aside, I hope that your kids at school get to do some fun Halloween stuff. I know that it kind of, with education, things go kind of the yin and the yang, they're cyclical. When I first started teaching bajillion years ago in the late 90s, we used to be able to do like a Halloween parade around our school. The kids wore costumes. It was kind of like it was when I was a kid. We used to get to wear costumes when I was a kid to school. I even went to a private Christian school, and we got to wear costumes. I mean, that's saying something. We're not even a public school. Now, I went to public school for kindergarten and first grade. Best costume ever. This is when I was in kindergarten. Of course, when you're in kindergarten, you don't really pick your costume. I guess your parents do because you're little. I look back at this one picture. I was a Kiss singer, like the band Kiss, and I was the guy. I don't know who this is, but had the star like painted over my eye. So I didn't wear the mask. My mom's actually pretty artistic. She painted my face to look just like the Kiss singer. So I had the star over the one eye and the white paint. I mean, I looked good. I saw the picture from, I haven't seen it in years, but I just remember it. And then I had that, what are those called? The Ben Cooper costumes, where I had like the body, little plastic smock kind of thing on. But yeah, the face, I didn't have I guess maybe, probably the mask wouldn't be great to wear all day, but I had my face painted like the Kiss guy, and it looked good. I mean, for a kindergartner. But yeah, it was just fun to look back at that picture back when I used to see it. I was a Kiss singer in kindergarten. Those are my favorite costumes. So again, what was yours? I can't wait to hear. Let me know. Patreon.com/BRGS podcast. Feedback is what this show is all about. And I appreciate our constant feedbackers like Len and Trisha and Dennis and a few more folks. You guys are the best. I love when we get to share feedback here in just a minute. But yeah, it's a cold one, but can't wait to sit out on the front porch, hopefully this evening with my wife, and dish out the candy. I posted a picture of our candy, our bucket, on Instagram last night and on Twitter. So if you want to see what we're giving out, we have a wide variety. We're giving out Reese's and Kit Kats and Twix and peanut M&Ms and regular M&Ms. And I think there's some Snickers in there. I mean, we've got a good variety. We got some blow pops. So if you're in the area, come on over. Come on over. We'll be sitting on our cul-de-sac, and I can't promise you we'll be out there long because they say the wind chill tonight during trick-or-treat time is going to be in the teens. So you might need to knock on the door, and I'll be sitting in the living room because we have a nice covered front porch, a small one, but it's covered. And that's where I was planning to sit until I found out it was going to be this dang cold, because Here's my thing about Halloween. I love Halloween because when I was a kid, I don't know if I've ever shared, I think I've shared this before on the podcast. We've been doing it forever, for 15 years now. I'm an asthmatic. I have severe asthma, and really, really had it bad as a kid. And I always have my worst bouts with asthma in the fall. When the leaves fall and sit on the ground and then it rains and they get kind of moldy and musty, that's when I always have my asthma attacks as a kid. And I'd always have to go to the emergency room and I'd always like have to stay inside and I'd be sick. And I'd always have super trouble breathing. I I had really bad asthma attacks in the fall until we got our first hard freeze. Then everything kind of died, which is good because we had our first hard freeze last night because it got done in 24. Anyway, there were a lot of Halloweens when I was a kid that I had to spend in the hospital. So there were a few Halloweens that I didn't get to go trick or treating as a kid. So I think this has led to me as an adult kind of really enjoying Halloween. So much so that like I worked at a haunted house for a couple of Halloweens. And I think I've talked about that, a place called Silo X, where I was paid to be a scare actor and chase people around this big maze, like a nuclear fallout thing. That was the bomb. You got paid cash every single night at the end of your shift. And it was just like a random place out in South St. Louis County, Valley Park, if you're from St. Louis. It's one of the greatest jobs ever for like a college student. You got paid cash every night. And they sent like they would take a random guest who went through. You didn't know who it was because it was open from like dark, which in Halloween time, it's like 6, and it would stay open until like 1 in the morning, on the weekends, especially. And they would just pick somebody at random throughout that whole night, and they would say, okay, we're going to let you go through the haunted house for free. And this was a huge haunted house. Like it took 20-25 minutes to go through the thing. It had inside parts, it had outside parts. I mean, it was gigantic. And they would tell these people, okay, you get to go through for free, but you got to tell us when you come out, like who was the best, like which person, like at what spot in the haunted house did you get the best scare? Like who scared you the best? And so every person in the haunted house that was working knew that if you got picked as the person who scared these people the best, you got like $50 cash bonus at the end of the night. But you didn't know who this was going to be. It could be anybody within your 6-7 hour shift. So what's that do? It incentivizes you to scare the crud out of every person that comes by because that could be your target. And you know me, I mean, you guys have known me from the podcast, right? I don't hide anything. I'm super competitive. And I mean, I'm going to do this anyway. Like if I'm going to be in there, I may as well scare the crud out of you. I mean, it's hilarious. And the stuff you see from that side of the fence, because my typical spot in the haunted house, it was the theme that I worked in. I worked in the first part that was kind of like a nuclear fallout, like maze, and there was an electric chair in there that was motion activated. And it was like a big maze. It was like green smoke, so you couldn't see, and you were going back and forth through this maze, and your guests constantly got lost. It was made out of wood, just 2x4s and wood, and it was just like a big wooden maze. But the thing was, at the very bottom of the maze, nobody knew this because it was total. The only thing you could see was like this green color because they had green, because it's supposed to look like nuclear fallout, right? It's called Silo X. So, but it was like in a big tent. It was huge. It was kind of inside, but kind of not. So the fog I mean, it was so thick. I probably took 10 years off my life now that I think about it, because I was in there for like 6 hours a night for like a month, leading up to Halloween. Anyway, so I'm in there, right? And you have these spots where you can hide, right? Because you're in there before they pump the fog in, and like how to get around because you've seen it before anybody gets in. The lights are on, there's no fog, you know how to get around. The trick was where all these walls are in this maze, and they're all just made out of 2x4s and plywood. At the very bottom, for about 18 inches, there's no plywood under there. So you can crawl under all these maze walls. But I mean, if you're just walking through, you have no idea. You think the walls go all the way to the floor, right? All the way, and it's gravel. It's because it's in like a parking lot, that they just rented. It's basically just a gravel lot. But the bottom 18 inches, you can cut across like 5 walls just by crawling right through there. And it didn't matter because like what we had to wear was like camouflage, like army stuff, because that was kind of it was like supposed to be like an old army base. So you just crawl, over a few walls. You could scare people like 5 times because you'd sneak up on them, like be better, and you could hear. And the thing was, you couldn't see them because you couldn't see anything in there. But when you were working, you knew where they were going because you knew like this is a dead end, so they have to go this way. And so you could cut them off, go under the thing, and just get them again. And the thing was like your eyes would adjust better than theirs, and you knew where people were headed because they didn't know where they were going. You could cut them off, and you would use your hearing. You could hear them, but it was one of the most fun jobs because for somebody that likes to kind of jump out and scare people, and I love doing this to like Paige and Mallory and Pam. They hate that. They hate it. But it's one of those things. It's hilarious to see. I mean, I had people like on their hands and knees, like begging me, oh, please, sir, just let me pass. Please, sir. I mean, I had people I know they peed their pants. I mean, no kidding. And these people paid like $20 to go through the haunted house. It was wild because it was the biggest haunted house in St. Louis at the time. Like there were radio commercials and everything. And people would wait in line for like 2 hours to go through this thing. It was, I mean, it was well known. And it was so fun to see it from that side. And the whole thing it was all about listening, right? Because I set up myself next to this motion activated electric chair guy. So like the people come up and like there's a motion activated thing. When they got close enough, this guy would be in an electric chair, but and he would shake, and then they would like freak out. And then once they got past him, he would stop, and I would be down the next hall. But the thing was, it would kind of loosen up. But we got past that. But the thing, and they'd always, and it was always a group. They'd let groups in at a time, 5, 6, 7 people at a time, and so the thing was, you just listened, right? You just listen. Oh man, the thing scared me to death. Oh my gosh. And so you hear them talking to each other like, oh man, we survived going past the electric chair. But you hear them coming closer and closer and closer. And then a 6'3" dude jumps out with his like, with the flashlight. And then I chased them back towards the electric chair. And they're just like, people are scattering, people are on the ground, people running each other over, and I'm just laughing my rear off because I'm getting paid to do this. It was so fun. Silo X. And it's still open. It's just in a different location now, outside of Fenton, Missouri, but it was so fun. So yeah, just something I was going to throw out there. Halloween tonight. Hope you have fun giving out the candy. If that's your job, I'll be doing that, trying to stay warm. If you're going out, remember, I always say this on the podcast, truly though, the kids are having fun. They're not looking out. So they're going to be jumping out in the streets and crossing streets like crazy. Just you be careful with your car and, take it easy on the way home tonight. Just really take it easy because, the kids will have on the masks. Sometimes they'll be dressed in dark colors, and they're not going to be aware. So just double check. Just make sure the kids can have a safe Halloween. You don't want to hit anybody. And we just want everybody to be safe. So be careful and hope your kids get all the candy. And remember, if you're a parent, take the parent tax, get all the Kit Kats, get all the Reese's, and have fun. So that's kind of what's going on around here. So I did have a couple of tough things happen. Just a couple of families. I know that we have a lot of folks out there in our podcast community that are, if you could just really kind of lift up a couple of people in prayer, if you're one of those people who do pray. My best friend in high school, his name was Corey. Now, I've talked about Steve, who passed away a long time ago. He's my catcher. I was a pitcher and he was a catcher, and he was killed by a drunk driver probably about 15 years ago now. We were great friends. But one of my other really good friends, really one of my best friends in high school, quick story about how I met Corey. He was a country guy. And so freshman year of high school, I tried out for the basketball team my freshman year because I was pretty tall, right? I mean, you guys have seen me. I was kind of tall, and I was about this height in high school. And so I played, I played basketball in 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And so you get this, I went to a big public high school. And so I go to the high school tryouts, and, all these dudes are trying out for high school basketball. I mean, lots. I mean, we had 112 guys try out for baseball. I think basketball wasn't quite as many, but I think it was like 80. And, only about 15 people make basketball. And so this other kid, which I'd never met him at this point, tries out. He's trying out too, and he's taller than me. And there weren't a whole lot of other white guys trying out for the basketball team. And so he comes over, and so the one thing was, so varsity's trying out, JV's trying out. So what they did, they didn't have enough gyms. So they ship us on a bus over to the middle school, which is about 15 minutes away. So first thing we have to do is like change, get on a bus, go over to the middle school. And then they put us out on a track and make us run 2 miles every day, which I hated running. I hated running back then. And this track isn't even a rubber track. It's like cinders. It's like this black little gravel stuff. And it's like, so this is like October. It's like this time of the year. It's drizzly, it's freezing, and they're like making us run 2 miles. And I'm like, do I even like basketball this much? And so I'm slow. Corey is my friend, and I meet him. We're like a couple of the only two, white dudes trying out for the basketball team. We're the tall guys, right? We're going to be the centers or hopefully forwards or something. And so we kind of bond over this because, and, I got to talking to him. I'm like, I went up to him like, dude, are they trying to kill us? Like, they're trying to give us pneumonia. It's like raining. It's drizzly. Like they're making us run 2 miles on this cinder track. It's like they're ruining our sneakers. I signed up to play basketball. Like we're not even in the gym. We're not even at our school. We're at the middle school. Like I'm done with this middle school. I'm in high school now. And so we started talking. He's like, dude, I just want to go back to Illinois because he was from this place called Staunton, Illinois, the small time. He was a small town kid. He was tall. Thing was, man, he could shoot. This kid, he was taller than me. He was 6'5". But man, he's like straight out of Hoosiers. This guy he is a basketball player. Corey, my friend, he was a great player, and he ended up being one of my best friends ever. He's a great guy, but man, could he shoot. So we both made the team. I ended up getting pneumonia. So I got mono. So I ended up being in the hospital. No doubt. I missed 17 days of school in a row, was in the hospital for 4 days. It was a whole mess. So I didn't even play that year because they told me when I got sick so bad when I was in the hospital, my liver got swollen. They told me if I got hit in the liver, my liver could explode. It was a whole mess. So I ended up not even getting to play my freshman year. I sat on the bench and just kind of cheered. But Corey made the team, and he was an outstanding player. He played all 4 years. After that I gave up basketball and I said, I'm just playing baseball. I'm good with that. But Corey, he ended up being like my best friend through high school because we were in the same grade. Steve, my catcher, he was a year older than me, but Corey and I were in the same grade, and we did a lot of the same stuff. Like we were in National Honor Society together. We took a ton of classes together. He was also a tennis player in the spring when I was a baseball player. But he lived in my subdivision. We lived a street apart. And when I used to teach, when I taught gifted, Corey's mom was my boss. Corey's mom was the director of our gifted center. And so she had all the goods on me because for 4 years, I basically lived at her house because where everybody hung out, there were four of us. There was Mike, Corey, Ray, and Fred. So the four of us were like inseparable. There were the four dudes that hung out in high school. And we always went to Corey's basement. And so that's where we'd be on Friday nights, Saturday nights, whenever we had like went and crashed somewhere because they had the TV and they always had the best food. We'd always be over at Corey's house. And like, we all four, we went to junior and senior proms together. We rented the limo. We did all that stuff together. So this past week, of course, Facebook is kind of how you learn news. And I was just going on Facebook to post, one of the links to a recent show so that you guys could get it and see the news about it, a recent podcast. Because I haven't kept in touch with Corey as much as I should have, as we do sometimes as we get older. And I saw that Corey's daughter, who is 16, born about the exact same time as Mallory, because Mallory's going to be 16 in January, was tragically killed in a car accident this past week. And he just hit you because, one moment they're there and the next moment they're gone. So just if you could keep my friend Corey and his whole family, especially Bev, because that was her granddaughter. She was my boss and she was one of the best people I've ever met. So is Corey. They're just a great family, but just keep them in your prayers. It was just kind of shocking because, Maddie was, I didn't know Maddie because, Corey and I haven't, really hung out since high school very much, but, it's one of those things, man. You gotta love life and you gotta just hold on to those, just appreciate what you have. So just lift them up if you're one of those people that do that. And also again, rough week. One of my favorite podcasts that I listen to, I tell you that I listen to Disney podcasts, but I also listen to a lot of retro podcasts about vintage stuff, 80s things, toys, music, stuff like that. I really like, looking back at, things like that. And there was a gentleman who I really appreciated the podcast that he put out. His name was Jason Gross, and he started something called the Retro Network. And he just, talked about he grew up in Clearfield, Pennsylvania, which I've never been to Clearfield, Pennsylvania, but he talked about what his hometown was like, working at the A&W, and he worked at a radio station in Clearfield, a little small radio station with his friend Wyatt, and him and Wyatt would do podcasts together. They would look back at memories. They did a podcast called Memory Jogger sometimes, and they would just go back and tell stories. It's kind of like Mike in the Midwest. Honestly, it's kind of one of the inspirations for this show. I get on Twitter on Wednesday, and I see that he had passed away unexpectedly on Tuesday night, and he was only 46 years old, and he has 3 kids that are 13, 10, and I think 6. And it's one of those things that, you got to embrace life. So if you could keep his family in your prayers this week, that would be great for me. It's just one of those things that, life happens and people pass. And, to me, I'm faith-based, and I God has a plan for everything, but it is hard. You question things, and it's, it's kind of hit me kind of double barreled this week, because Corey's a great guy, and I can't imagine the pain that his family's going through. And they seem to be so strong on social media, what they're saying and what they're doing and posting memorials and stuff like that. But if you could just hug, I don't want to bring you down here with Mike in the Midwest. This is always supposed to be fun. I'm going to bring it back up, I promise you. But just for me, give a special hug to your kids today, or your significant other. Tell them you love them, because I appreciate our friendship that we have, even if we haven't met. You guys have let me do so many great things with our podcast. We've been able to support Give Kids the World, and you've been able to help families make memories that they'll never forget. And it's because of your love for those families down at Give Kids the World. And I wish I could hug all of you guys, because you are awesome. You guys have done so much for me. And I really, truly think of this as a family, and I appreciate you so very much. And I just don't think I get to say that enough. And I know that sometimes you don't get a chance to say that. So I just wanted to say that to you today, that I appreciate you taking the time to listen to our show. And I appreciate, more than that, our friendship, even if it's not an in-person friendship, even if we haven't had the chance to shake hands or talk in person at a park or at a race or on a ship. I appreciate you. You mean a lot to me. So thank you for that. I just want to make sure that we've had a chance to say that. Okay, so let's pick it back up. It's Halloween. Let's have some fun. So one of the things I think about Halloween that I used to love was, I've talked about spinning wheels. So I managed the skating rink, right, from the time I was 14. I worked there when I was 14, but I basically managed it and ran it all the way through college, and then came back even when I was teaching to work there sometimes. Because when you're a beginning teacher, you have 0 money, but you have time. Oh, wait, I need to hit the feedback from last week. I didn't hit the feedback. Let me hit the feedback from last week. Then I'll talk about spinning wheels. So last week we did the what's in the runDisney New Balance shoebox. I pulled out the shoebox, just random stuff that was sitting on the shelf, and I just pulled stuff out of it. So here's what Len said out in Maryland. He said, bragging on my children as suggested. They're both successful in their work, and between the two of them have provided us 3 beautiful grandchildren. My daughter is a writer and just signed her first writing contract that includes an advance payment, and her first editor, and her first editor and marketing agent. My son received his doctorate in physics from the University of Central Florida, and now teaches in Claymont, Delaware, in the high school department, or in the high school President Biden graduated. Wow. At the high school, besides physics, he teaches computer science. One of his computer science classes is to teach advanced data and analysis for students that are working with the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia to do advanced cancer research and analysis. Man, Len, you got to be proud, because your kids are changing the world. And that's what it's all about. I mean, honestly, that's great. When your kids are doing stuff to change the world, that's awesome. Len, proud of you. Again, glad to call you a friend. And how awesome is that for your kids? That is great, because they're doing something that means something. That's awesome. Trisha says, congrats to Paige and to you. Our kids' successes are a reflection of our parenting. I don't know about that. Sometimes I think our kids succeed in spite of us. I worked at a hospital in Madison, and it was great to see college athletes visiting the children's ward. I think it builds character for them while lightening up the faces of the kids. You mentioned character shoes, and I have to share that I have a growing collection of Star Wars shoes. I'm currently sitting at a dozen different pairs from various brands. Lastly, we dodged rain for Lorelei's trunk or treat. We went as characters from Phineas and Ferb and decorated the trunk like a backyard, complete with wooden fence and grass. We even made a candy cannon. I'll pop a picture in the Discord chat. I'll have to check that out. Yes. Where's Perry? I want to say we did a trunk or treat one time, Phineas and Ferb, at our church, because we did like 5 years in a row trunk or treats, and we always did kind of a Disney theme. I thought we did a Phineas and Ferb because I thought I remember doing a Perry. I'll have to look. Google Photos to the rescue. I'll have to check. I'll post it if I can find it. Finally, Dennis down in Texas says, your story with the box inspired me to check in a few boxes I have in my office. It was mostly a disappointment. I did find a few old programs for some hockey games from the 90s and early 2000s, but most of what was there included old tax forms, paperwork from closing on my house, and some old receipts. I'm not sure why I kept them. I enjoyed hearing about what Paige and the Flames were up to. You should be proud of her. I really loved watching my boys at martial arts the past few years. They started taking martial arts classes as in first grade and kindergarten. Now, 14 years later, most of them are instructors patiently working with the very type of little kids they used to be. I love watching them exhibit patience, discipline, and dedication on the mats as they set an example for the kids they are now teaching. Isn't that cool? The student now becomes the master. Yeah, no, that is cool to see when your kids can take what they learned and pass it on. That is cool. I do. I get a kick out of seeing Paige work with these athletes because I still see her as like the little kid that's playing the sport, and now she's leading athletes. It's come full circle, and she does a way better job than I ever did helping her learn the sport. And it's just it makes you feel good as a parent. It really does. So thank you, Trisha, Dennis, and Len, for that feedback. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you so much. If you have feedback about this show or any show, I love the feedback. Please come over to patreon.com/BRGuestPodcast. Okay, here we go, real quick. Spinning Wheels at Halloween, one of the best times of the year. So Spinning Wheels was our skating rink that I managed in Florissant, Missouri, and it was a staple in our community. It was the place where all the middle school kids, elementary school kids, and some early high school kids would come, especially on Friday nights. We have what was called the world famous Friday night session. I marketed it as that for years, and we would have, and I am not lying, it was not a big skating rink, but we would on average have 450 to 500 kids come to our skating rink on a Friday night. And it was crazy. I would DJ it. Typically, it would run from 7 to 11 was our Friday night session. And we would have a good time. You guys have all probably been to skating rinks. You know, we had the standard thing, couple skates, speed skates, backward skates. We'd do the four corners game. We'd do the hokey. We didn't do the hokey pokey on Friday nights. That was for little kids on Saturdays. But we'd have a good time. We'd play the top 40 music and, you know, take requests and all that good stuff. But on Halloween, we would do some cool stuff. Now, I also had some other like assistant managers and stuff. We'd get together, and I had this Debbie was one of our assistant managers. She lived in the country. She lived in Lincoln County, which was far away from where the skating rink was. It was way out in the country, and she was a country girl and had resources. And so I don't know how we did this, but so she lived on a kind of like a farm, and she said she could have her husband build us a coffin 1 year. So I'm like, okay. I was like, I'll get the money for you if you can go have your husband go to the hardware store and buy some plywood and build us a coffin. And she did. Her husband bought plywood and paint, black paint and everything, and we had a coffin. So we had a couple coffins, actually, now that I think back over the years. So here's just some of the fun stuff we did at Spinning Wheels over the years. And maybe you did this at your local skating rink. So I'm just going to give you some memories from some fun stuff we did on Halloween skates. And I will tell you, we did all night skates. So we would do some skates from 7 p.m. They ended at 7 a.m. I don't know if you ever did that at your skating rinks in your local towns. So those were all night skates, like $20. You'd stay all night. Best, cheapest baby. Now you look back as a parent, right? Cheapest babysitting ever. Um, and we'd, do a countdown at 2 a.m. or whatever. But they were fun to work. I mean, when you're a kid, they were a blast. But anyway, so we'd have the coffin. And I just remember like we gave coffin rides because we put like little casters on it with little wheels. And so I remember like we'd play Thriller and then we just, it was a skating rink, right? So we'd put people in the coffin and we'd give coffin rides around the skating rink, like we just take turns, put people in it, and we'd take Polaroids. I mean, again, this was a long time ago. I think this was pre-digital cameras. So we would just take a Polaroid and we'd sell them for like $1 or $2. You get your picture like rolling around the spinning wheels floor in a coffin. So you'd lay there like you're dead, but you're rolling around in the skating. I mean, what were we thinking? One of the things that we did, and I think I've talked about this on the show before. I don't know why we did this on Halloween, other than that it was fall. I don't even know if this was legal. We did a lot of stuff that was borderline illegal. So I mentioned Debbie, the other manager. She lived on a farm in Lincoln County, way out. So she had chickens. We got this idea. I don't know where we got this idea, but we had this idea. It was called the Chickapoo Raffle. So what we brought in her chicken. She had a chicken. We brought in a chicken in a cage, and we divided the floor of the cage into like 50 squares looking like a checkerboard, right? So like we put numbers like 1 through 50. The chicken wasn't in the cage at first, like it was in a second cage. And the kids could buy this couldn't have been legal. I don't know how we did it. Anyway, we did this, but I don't know how we gave out the squares. I forgot how we did the squares. But 50 people had squares. And the way this worked was, so you would have like your square, like you have square 7 or square 29 or whatever. And then we would throw the chicken into the cage, and it was called the Chickapoo Raffle. So you know where this is going, right? And so the chicken would go in there and just kind of hang out in the cage. And wherever the chicken pooed, like if he pooed on 32, you won. And it was where he pooed first. And it was called the Chickapoo Raffle. And you won like $50 or something, or you got a prize like out of the pro shop, maybe got a set of wheels or something for your skates. But that was one of the fun things we did. And we always did like, music. We do Thriller. We had, the videos. We had the fog machine. We'd always do a mummy contest where people would take the toilet paper and toilet paper each other. But at the skating rink, what we did was that you had to like TP your friend, but then they would have to like be able to skate from one end of the rink to the other end of the rink and keep the toilet paper intact. Again, great idea. Like thinking about it at the time. Now, as somebody who's an adult thinking about liability, I don't know how we didn't get sued over this stuff. Like we did so many crazy stuff. We were rolling people around a coffin. Basically we had people, skating with not being able to see. Um, we had fog so thick you couldn't even see because we had this fog machine, and we had a big fog machine at our skating rink. And we had these 2 pipes. It would come out at either end of the skating rink. And I mean, on Halloween, we would just crank it. That fog juice was expensive. My boss that owned the rink, I mean, he was my next door neighbor and basically grew up at his house. We were buds, but he'd be like, dude, slow down on the fog juice. That stuff is expensive. But I mean, we were making money hand over fist on Halloween. You put 500 kids in there, and they're just spending money on the arcade games. They're buying snacks. They're buying pizzas. They're buying Powerades. I mean, we were rolling in the money on that night. So it was fine. But man, I mean, if you looked outside, the skating rink probably looked like, like the town of Florissant was burning down. But we had good times. And I don't know if you guys had stuff like this at your local skating rink, because the thing is, I don't know. My guess is, and from what I've learned, because I used to inline speed skate, and these competitions would happen in small towns all around, the Midwest, is that almost every town had a skating rink. Not anymore, but they did in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. Like especially small towns, every small town would have a roller rink. And I think every roller rink would be the place to go for like a Halloween celebration on the Friday night before Halloween. It might not be on Halloween night, but it'd be the Friday night or Saturday night before Halloween. And you'd have a Christmas party, before Christmas. New Year's Eve, same thing. And it was kind of the place where you would get together with your friends, and but it wouldn't just be your friends from your school, it'd be kids from other schools in the area. And it was a place where sometimes you'd have fights because there'd be rivals there. And we didn't have a lot of fights at our skating rink. We kept things under control pretty well. But it was a place where people got together and you kind of learned social norms. Now that I look back on it for kids, I mean, you learned how to get along with others. You kind of learn the way the world works. But on Halloween, it was great because we would have mummy contests, and we let everybody wear costumes. I mean, we had a costume contest, and we did so many wild things, but it was fun because I had carte blanche to do whatever I wanted as long as we could get as many people in there as possible. I remember one time, here's another thing we did on Halloween. This one almost got this was a bad idea. We only did this one once. I don't know why I got this idea. We got 100 $1 bills. Okay, so here, picture this. Everybody's on the floor, the skating rink floor, right? But we made everybody sit with their back against the walls on the perimeter of the floor. Okay, so every kid has to sit with their back against the wall on the perimeter of the skating rink floor. So they're on the very outside of the floor. I go out there with all the floor guard people with $101. Maybe it was a couple $100. I don't know. It was a lot of money, but it was all $1 bills. And so we went to the bank that day, I remember, and got all these ones. We take all these ones and we start scattering them on the floor, right? And I bring in a leaf blower. And so we do a money scramble. And so everybody has to be touching the wall. And then I get the leaf blower, woo, and I start shooting these $1 bills everywhere. And then everybody just goes and grabs money. Oh my God, people start killing each other. That was the worst. I don't know why I thought that'd be a good idea. It was called the money scramble, but I mean, we had so many people there that night for the money scramble. I think that might have been New Year's Eve, but we only did it once because it was almost like people were going to be in the hospital. So that was wild. Anyway, we're running way long. Those are some of my stories from Halloween at the skating rink. Did you ever do Halloween? Of course, we did Halloween costume contests and gave away prizes for that. But did you ever celebrate Halloween at a skating rink? And if so, I need to hear about it because that was my jam. So patreon.com/BRGS podcast. Also, let me know, how did your Halloween go? What was your best candy you got? What'd your kids do? I got to hear about it. Let's share it for the good of the cause for next week. But until we get back together again, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and boo to you.